Hey, it's Jess. Welcome back. Today I'm here with my January wrap-up where I will be talking about all the books that I read in January of 2025. As usual, I will put my Storygraph stats on the screen. I read a total of 14 books this month, which equaled out to be 4,650 pages. As usual, the largest section of moods is dark, tense, emotional, and mysterious. That's usually what I end up reading. Out of the books I read, I did read one nonfiction book this month, so yay, getting back in my nonfiction. Really am happy about that. Looking at the genres, again, no surprise, horror, thriller, a little bit of romance in there, but mostly horror. Part of that is because I did participate in Winterween, which we kind of have talked about, but that was a week-long reading challenge where basically I just read horror books for a whole week. So that's where a lot of these, that's why the genre is so high. Looking at format, I read 5 physical books, 5 digital or ebooks, and 4 audiobooks. So a pretty good mix this month. My average star rating was 3.73, so not a very great way to start the year. I had a pretty mediocre reading month. That's okay. That happens sometimes. I had one book that I didn't rate because I don't rate nonfiction. 1 2-star book, 1 3-star book, 3 3.5-star books, 6 4-star books, and 2 4.5-star books. Before we get into the books that I did read, I wanted to mention I did not get to Spark of the Everflame, by Penn Cole, which is a book that I pulled from my TBR jar last month. I just didn't get to it. I read a whole bunch of books during Winterween, and then I didn't fall into a slump, but then I read some really chunky books, and I just didn't get to it. So we're gonna go put it back in this jar right here. All right, so the one nonfiction book I read was From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty. Hopefully you can see that. It's pretty washed out. This, pulled it from the jar 3 times, finally read it. We did it. Woo woo! So the slip of paper is going in my red jar. I love that this is getting full, more full, fuller. Anyway, in From Here to Eternity, Caitlin Doughty traveled the world and also the United States and learned about death rituals and death practices in other areas, because death and the funeral business, it's been turned into a business in America. It is commercialized, it is sanitized, it is ridiculously expensive. This book shows you that death does not have to be that way. And it has so many stories. She was in California, Bolivia, there was a couple stories from Japan, Spain, North Carolina, Mexico, just all over the world. And it was just so interesting. Caitlin Doughty is, first of all, a great writer. I listened to this as an audiobook and she narrates it. She is also just a great speaker. I have had the pleasure of listening to her speak 3 separate times. She's come to my town to talk about her 3 books. I did hear that she has another book coming out about the Titanic, and that sounds super interesting. If you don't know, Caitlin Doughty also runs the YouTube channel Ask a Mortician. So if you have any interest in death and death practices and what you can and can't do after you're dead with the body, check that out. I don't know. That's kind of what this was about, but it was fascinating. I'm so glad that I finally got around to reading this. I loved it. My 2-star read was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I don't have the book anymore because I had to return it to my library. In this book, you are following Nick. He gets notice one day that his wife is missing, don't know where his wife is, and so the police try to help him find her, and then he becomes a suspect, and you're following him. You are also following, on the flip side, diary entries from Amy, his wife, between his chapters. So it's like a chapter from Nick's perspective and then a diary entry from Amy. This book, I read this book because it was the pick for my Candy Salad Book Club. We changed the format of our book club where we picked books that had been turned into movies. So we read the book, now we're going to watch the movie We were supposed to do that this weekend, but all of us got sick, so we haven't had our book club meeting yet. Anyway, both of the people in this book, Nick and Amy, awful, awful people. Didn't care about them, didn't want to root for them. There's 3 parts to the book. The third part, like, none of it made either of them any better. This book took me forever to get through. I didn't care. They were awful people. It didn't matter to me that Amy was missing. It didn't matter to me that the police thought Nick did it, because I didn't care about either of these people. I feel like that might be a slightly controversial opinion because a lot of people love this book and a lot of people love this movie, but I just, no. I can say I read it. I finally read Gone Girl. Had never read it before in my life. Will never read it again. Will think about it with anger, probably, though. My 3-star book that I read was At Dark I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca. I received an advanced listener copy, an advanced reader copy of this from NetGalley, so thank you, NetGalley. So I did listen to this one as an audiobook. You are following Ashley. He has trauma in his life. His wife and his son are gone. His wife had cancer and has passed away. His son is missing. And so he has done all these body modifications and all these piercings. He has like a ritual trying to make people appreciate their life. And he's talking about his appearance, and if I have to hear the phrase, "At dark I become loathsome," one more time, I swear I'm gonna lose my frickin' mind. I get what they were going for. And I get that that's the name of the book. But it was like, I heard it so many times. And it was just full of like self-hating, where he's like, Ashley's just like, I look like this now and I'm a monster. And I don't know. There was some really unnecessary stories in there, like some online anecdotes. He meets one person named Jinx. Jinx tells him this ridiculous story. Don't really know why. There was another story about these 2 men. One of them has cancer. That story made me really uncomfortable. This one wasn't for me. I love Eric LaRocca's writing. I have read 3 or 4 of their other books and really enjoyed most of them. But this one it wasn't for me. All right, now into my 3.5-star books. I only had 3. Unfortunately, 2 of the 3 were books that I read for Winterween, so that's pretty disappointing. The first 3.5-star book I read was The Pale House Devil by Richard Cadre. Again, read this for Winterween. For the prompt, read a book with a house on the cover, which mine has, or house in the title, which mine also has. In this book, you are following 2 men. One is alive, one is not. They are kind of like hitmen. And they are hired by this man, this old man, to go to this man's house. The man lives in a bunker now. Not a bunker. He doesn't live at his family's house. It's called the Pale House. And there is a devil demon in it. So this man hires these 2 men to defeat the demon. To kill the demon. I don't know. It's a really short book. That's the only thing it had going for it, in my opinion. Apparently this is the beginning of a series. None of the other books in the series are out. I will not be continuing the series. I don't know. It didn't do it for me. My next 3.5-star book was Where I End by Sophie White. Again, read this for Winterween. For the prompt, read a thriller or horror book. This is a book set in Ireland on an island. Our main character, I believe her name is pronounced Elin. She and her grandmother live on this island with Elin's mother, who is basically like a living corpse. She's bedridden, comatose. Elin and her grandmother have to do everything for her mother. In fact, Elin normally calls her the bed thing. Doesn't even acknowledge that she's her mother. Elin is very unhappy with her life, living on this island. The people on the island don't like this family, think that they're cursed. They're basically outcasts up on a cliff in this island. One day, Elin meets a new woman, a woman who is new to the island. Her name is Rachel, and she starts becoming obsessed with Rachel, and kind of just like, you know, dives into insanity and obsession. I read extreme horror books. Parts of this I was just like, ugh, that's too much even for me. It's not extreme horror, but there were some graphic scenes in it, and I was just like, why? What is happening? I don't like it. I don't know. This one, again, wasn't for me. Didn't like it. My next 3.5 star book was The Risk by S.T. Abbey. This is the first book in the Mind F series. It's a total of 5 books. I picked it out of my TBR jar. It's one that I had on my Kindle. I did read it, so it goes in the jar. Basically, you are following this woman who is a serial killer, but she is targeting specific men for a specific reason. She meets this detective, they go on dates, they end up liking each other and basically falling in love. He doesn't know that she's the killer that he's after. And she's like, this is really dangerous. I shouldn't be dating this guy because he is looking for me, not knowing that it's her. Kind of just a mediocre book. I heard that the first couple books in this series, there are 5, I can't remember if I said that, are not that great. So, you know, I read the first one. I will read at least the second one. I'm pretty sure Katie Colson said she didn't really like it until the third one. They're really short books. This book was like 180 pages. So it's not hard for me to read, at least the next one. So I probably will. But this one, it was a good introduction to the characters, I guess. But it just overall wasn't very wowing to me. My first 4-star book was The Changeling by Victor Laval. I read this one for Winterween as well for the prompt, read a horror book published over 5 years ago. This was published in 2017. I also had a strip for this one. I have a strip for this one, so it's going in the jar because I read it. Yay! In this book, you are following Apollo. He has some trauma in his childhood. When he was 4, I think 4 or 8, his dad left. Just like left their family, never heard from them again. Apollo grows up. He meets his wife, Emma. He meets Emma. They fall in love. They get married. They have a baby. And when the baby is a few months old, Emma starts acting really weird and trying to say, that's not my baby. That's not a baby. Basically, like, doesn't want to have anything to do with Brian, which is the name of the baby. And then when Brian is, I think, 6 months old, he disappears. Emma disappears. Apollo is just left. He's left on his own. He goes to jail for a little bit because they think that he killed his wife and son, which he didn't. And when he gets out of jail, he finds out that Emma is still alive. So he is on the hunt to find her. Wants to find his wife, wants to find his son, because he's like, my son is still alive. I know that he is. And so that's what it is. And it's called The Changeling, so it is the story of a changeling. It was a good book, and then the last part, it just like went a way that I was not expecting at all. I still enjoyed it. I didn't expect it to go that way. It definitely leaned more into like the supernatural, paranormal, fantasy, not realism side of things. But overall, I really liked this one. I enjoyed the writing. I liked the characters. I felt for Apollo. I was happy to be on this journey with him, even though it was a sad journey because we wanted to know where Emma and Brian were. But I thought it was well written, and yeah, I really liked this one. My next 4-star book was Brother by Anya Allborn. This I read for Winterween for the prompt, read a book at night or in the dark. I have this on my Kindle, so I actually read it on my Kindle, and I read it at dark. I read it at night, in the dark, but I have the physical copy from my library. You are following Michael. He is part of a family in the Appalachian Mountains, I believe West Virginia. And he His family has some unique tastes of entertainment. One day he goes into the town with his brother and meets a girl and realizes, I don't really want to be part of this family. I don't really feel like I fit in with this family. I don't want to be a part of this family. And he has dreams of leaving. Well, his brother finds out about these dreams and does not want that to happen. His mother does not want that to happen. So there's a lot of family dynamics that go into this. I wouldn't call this extreme horror, but there are some gory scenes and some bloody descriptive scenes. So just a heads up on that if that's something that bothers you. There are, unalivings in this book and then some descriptions about that. Overall, really liked it. I love Anya Allborn's writing. I feel very connected to the characters. And this story, I don't know what I expected going into it, but the story was not what I thought it was going to be. And I like that. And overall, yeah, really enjoyed this one. My next 4-star book was The Queen by Nick Cutter. In this, you are following Margaret. Her best friend has been missing. And 3 other boys from their high school have also been missing. Margaret and her friend were kind of outcasts. They were not well liked. One day, Margaret gets a phone delivered to her doorstep, and when she opens the phone, she gets text messages from someone who seems to be her best friend. Her best friend's name is Charity, but they go by Cherry and Plum. So Margaret is Cherry and Charity is Plum. Those were the streets that they used to live on. They used to live together, live at the same trailer park, and those were the streets that they used to live on. So I'm going to talk about Cherry and Plum. So Cherry starts getting these texts from Plum saying, giving her directions on things to do. You need to go to this intersection. You need to talk to this person. You need to go to the high school and go down into the room. Cherry's just like, I guess I'm going to follow these, because she wants to find out what happened to Plum and where she is, because she doesn't believe that she's dead. And it also just you find out where Plum is, and then it just kind of goes crazy. This book has to do a lot with bugs. If you do not like insects or bugs, do not read this book. It is gross. There are definitely some gross scenes with ants, with wasps. Lots of people turning into bugs. It was gross. Nick Cutter, man, he really knows how to write the body horror, and I would say that this definitely has a lot of body horror and a lot of bug horror. The reason it got a 4-star instead of a 5-star for me, there is another storyline in this by another guy, Rudyard. I always want to say Rudyard Kipling. That's not who it is. Obviously, that's an author. That's not who's in this book. Rudy. Good old Rudy. And it takes a while to figure out why you're reading about this and why you're learning about his backstory. And anytime his chapters came on, I was just like, I don't care. I don't care about this guy. I don't care about what happened. Let's just get back to our mystery and find out where Plum is. So that's why it got knocked down a little bit for me. But overall, still really enjoyed this one. Also, when I read the author bio with this, I discovered that Nick Cutter is a pen name for Craig Davidson, who wrote the Saturday Night Ghost Club that I read in November, and I loved that book. I had no idea that they were the same person. Their writing style is so distinctly different that if I had not read that, I would not know. So good for you, Craig Davidson / Nick Cutter, because you definitely write differently as Nick than you do as Craig. So anyway, fun fact. My battery's about to die. We gotta go. Next 4-star book, Lies and Weddies by Kevin Kwan. I read this for the Buzzword-a-thon. The prompt for January was Truth and Lies, Lies and Wedding. This book is so hard to describe. You're following a family. They're really rich. The doctor to the family and his daughter live on the property. And his daughter basically like grew up with the children in this book. The mom does not like that because the children, this family is like, they're like the Duke or not the Archbishop. That's not what it is. I don't remember. Duke of Greshambury? Oh, the Earl. The Earl and his family. The oldest daughter of the Earl is getting married to a prince. There's a lot of money problems going on that people don't know about. Then there's a lot of other like drama that happens. I liked it. I liked this book. Again, reminded me very much of Crazy Rich Asians, which I love. Which, again, Kevin Kwan wrote that too. So one of the main parts of this is the mother in this book who's so focused on like image and being rich and how people see her is Chinese. Her children are half Chinese, half English because they were born in like the Earl is from England. And it talks a lot about how even the rich Asians, like, she does not want her children to marry Chinese people or especially unless they're rich. It all has to come back to finances and I don't know. I liked this one. The next book I read was Quicksilver by Callie Lark. Is that what it is? I gave this book a 4, but I just watched Katie Colson's book video about this. This is ACOTAR fan fiction. It is very, very much like that. However, I liked the ending better than ACOTAR, which is why it got a higher rating for me. But looking back on it, still don't know if it deserved a 4, but it got a 4-star for me. This is really hard to succinctly explain. Basically, you have Ceres. She lives in the mortal realm. She gets transported to the Fey realm. She meets Kingfisher, who is a shadow daddy, even though they never say that, and he doesn't have wings. He is a shadow daddy. And she is helping them fight and create relics so that they can travel through the Quicksilver, which is what the book's named after, which is this like metal this substance that can open portals to other realms. But if you go through it, you lose your mind. So she's trying to create relics because it has to do with alchemy. And then you find out that Kingfisher has been gone from his army or whatever, and his friends have been missing him. You find out where he is. It's so much like ACOTAR and every Spicy Fae book. But again, the ending had a twist that I didn't see coming. So that's why it got a little bit higher star for me. This is part of a trilogy. The second book comes out in October. So I will read the second book because I did like the first one enough. But I don't know. Oh my god, 3%. I think I have to stop now. Hey, I'm back. Sorry if the angle looks weird. My camera was about to die, had like 2% battery, so I had to go charge it for just a little bit because I literally have 3 books left to talk about. So let's talk about them. I don't have a lot of battery left, so let's talk. The last 4-star book was This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer, I think is how you say her name. I listened to this as an audiobook, partially because I love this cover. It is amazing. And I just keep seeing it and I'm like, I want to read that book. This is kind of it's a weird book. You are following a group of people. One of them is like a rock climber, and she's just been signed by this big company that sponsors her to do rock climbs or something like that. And she is invited by this guy who's making a documentary. They found this valley, this stretch of woods that no one has ever like charted or mapped. No one knows what it is. And so he's like, we're going to go in here and we're going to chart this valley. And Dylan, I think is the name of our main character. She is just like, yeah, because that can get me new followers and everything like that. So they go in and they stay outside the valley at like an inn, and people are like, yeah, that's a weird place. They go in and then they just like walk in circles the entire day. Like they're like, we've passed that tree. We've passed that tree. Hey, guess what? We already passed that tree. They don't know where they're going. Weird, trippy stuff starts happening. People start seeing things. They start losing time. they start, again, like there's this one part where Dylan goes on this rock climb and she free climbs. So there's not like pulleys and stuff like that. She's just putting, I don't know. She puts like handholds in the rock. I'm not a rock climber, clearly. I don't know what they're called. Anyway, there's not like a rigging system. She's free climbing. And she's climbing and she's climbing. And then she's like, there's this one part where she tries to climb up and take a step. And then she's right back where she was. Tries to climb and pull up, right back where she was. And she was videoing herself. And when she got down, the people were like, you literally just stopped. Like, you were just hanging out right there and we didn't know what was happening. We thought, I don't know. So, really weird stuff's going on. And it just goes completely off the rails. It has a super weird ending. You don't really know what's going on. I really liked this one. It was fun to listen to. And just, I don't know. I don't know what I expected from this, but it is not... I say that a lot. It was not what I expected, though. It was just, this is what I want, like, outdoor hiking, rock climbing horror to be. Just a complete, it's just so weird and time loopy, and I love horror like that. So I really, really enjoyed this one. Okay, 2 more books to talk about. 4.5 star books. My first 4.5 star book was Guillotine by Delilah S. Dawson. I read this for Winterween. For the prompt, read a novella, manga, or listen to a spooky audiobook. This book is kind of like Ready or Not and Get Out. Anyway, so you're following Des, and she is a fashion designer. She's a clothing designer. She wants so badly to work with this one specific woman who is like the head best ever. Everyone wants to work for her fashion designer. Des meets up with this woman's son and goes on a date with him. She doesn't like him, but she finds out that he's going to the island with his family for Easter. So she's like, oh my gosh, can I come too? I would love that. And he's like, yeah, cool. I'll bring you back to my family because she's hot and he wants to hit that, even though she doesn't like him. She's like, cool, let's go. Well, when she gets there, things are super weird. They have to sign a bunch of NDAs. They take their cell phone. They go through Dez's luggage, and anything that was pink, anything that's the color pink, they take out because pink is the color that the servants wear. And there's just all these servants standing around, but you can't talk to them. And it's just very weird and creepy and very much the Ready or Not family. Big, rich, hoity-toity family. And then the servants basically decide to rise up and it completely goes off the rails. If you watch my Winterween vlog, the second one, I was listening to this at work and all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. It got pretty descriptive. There are some very descriptive scenes in this book of some horror that happens. I really liked it. It was a roller coaster ride. I wanted to know what was going to happen. And really, it's about rich people being awful and getting what they deserve. And I really appreciated that. My last 4.5 star book was The Reformatory by Tanana Reeve Dew. I have also returned this one to the library. This book is based on a real reform school that was in Florida. And I can't remember what it's called. But you are following these 2 black children, Grace and Robert. They're walking to school one day, and the son of the wealthiest white family is basically like hitting on Grace and coming on to her, and Robert doesn't like that. So he kicks this guy, and even though he's only 12 years old, also this is set in 1950s Florida. So very much still segregation, not slavery, but we're all, basically acting like slavery down in the South still. Very, very much black people are not people, you know how it was. And so this 12-year-old boy, because he kicks this white boy, in defense of his sister, gets sent to this reform school. It's known to be a bad place. Kids die there. And the blacks, like, they're segregated even there. The black children, all of them, there's a bunch of abuse that happens there, which I don't think the outside world knows necessarily. Like, they don't know, but they know, but they don't know. So Robert is trying to get out of here, get out of there. He's trying to escape. When he's there, he finds out that the reformatory is actually haunted by ghosts. Because in the 1920s, there was a big fire and most of the black side of the school, like, and the grounds burned down. And so Robert starts seeing the ghosts of these children that were there. There's other subplots too. It's a lot confusing. Grace is on the outside trying to get a lawyer, trying to get help, trying to get her brother out of this awful place where there is abuse, where he's having to work in the farms and pick corn and basically just like he was put into this awful place for no real reason. Again, this is based on a real school that was in Florida. The author's note at the end says Tananarive Due has a family member that was named Robert Stevens, and so that went to the school. And this isn't his exact story. This isn't his story. She used that name as like inspiration for the character. But there are other books and movies out about this school. The Nickel Boys is one that I've heard a bunch about lately, so I need to pick that book up because every time I talked about the reformatory on social media for the last 2 weeks, everyone's like, the Nickel Boys. And I'm like, cool, I guess I better read that book too. I will tell you, this book was incredibly hard to read. Not because the writing was difficult to read, but because of the subject matter. I did go on a rant about this. This book is set in 1950. That was only 75 years ago. And there is so much racism, sexism, hatred in this book because that's what life was like in 1950. I assume I was not alive from what I've heard. And I went on a rant because, again, 2025, 75 years later, why are we still having these same conversations? Why am I still online now seeing all of this racism, hatred, misogyny? I don't understand. And it has gotten worse the last 3 weeks in America. And you know why. And it just, I guess it was appropriate time for me to be reading it, but also I'm like, I hate seeing these parallels between this fiction book and real life right now. Anyway, I'm not going to rant about that again. The only reason this didn't get a 5-star for me is because it is totally a me thing. I do not usually read like historical fiction horror, and the beginning was a little bit slow for me, like parts of it, and some parts in the middle kind of dragged a little bit. So that's the only reason it didn't get a 5-star. Still a wonderful book. It was a wonderful book. Very difficult to read, but important and good. I've never read anything else by Tananarive Due. I've heard of a bunch of her other stuff, and I definitely want to check out some of her other works after reading this one. So those are all the books that I read in January. Again, I read so many because I had a week, I read 5 in a week because of Winterween. That really helped bump up my numbers. I wish I could say that I had better books because, again, even though I read so many, it was a pretty mediocre reading month, but that's what happens sometimes. All you can do is just reflect on it and move on. All right. My camera is about to die again, so I'm going to go. So now I want to know, have you read any of these books? What did you think? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.